The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. A beautiful, bright, sunny day here in Christina Lake, British Columbia today. Hopefully you're getting some of the same. Today we're going to talk about the must-knows of daily shop management. Last week, our last webinar, we drew the roadmap to profit. And hopefully you were able to take advantage of some of those things. Today we're going to follow that path and kind of reinforce that map and give you some information on how to, the things that you must do on a daily basis to bring that roadmap to profitability into fruition. Our presentation should last about 20 minutes today. We're using GoToWebinar as always. All of the participants in GoToWebinar are muted during the presentation portion so that we get a good, clear sound and a nice, clean recording to share with you afterward. We do encourage your participation. We like your questions. We like your comments and feedback. So if at any time during the webinar you do have a question, simply use the control panel to raise your hand. Angela will monitor the traffic and interrupt me if need be to take a question. We'll also open it up at the end of the webinar and get your questions and feedback at that time as well. As always, hopefully there'll be one or two ideas today that you can implement easily and quickly in your business that'll translate to some increased sales and, more importantly, increased profit for your business. So let's get started. Few thought starters for you today. Which would you prefer? Would you like to have sales of $100,000 in your shop with a profit of $5,000? Or would you like to have sales of $80,000 with a profit of $15,000? Not a difficult question. I think everybody would choose the $15,000 worth of profit. On the lower level of volume, it's the profit at the end of the day that really matters. In reality, probably what most of you would answer, I want sales of $100,000 with $25,000 of profit. But many times what a lot of owners look at is something that is maybe not profitability generated. A lot of small businesses, a lot of repair shop owners and managers watch their bank balance. It shows them their ability. Am I going to have enough money in the bank to meet my payroll, pay my bills, and so on? But bank balance is not an indicator of profitability. You can have money in the bank but not be profitable, or you could have no money in the bank and be profitable. There are a lot of variables that go in there. So watching your bank balance, well, it's important obviously to know whether you can write a check or not. It's not an indicator of profitability. Operating profit and cash flow are far more effective indicators of financial performance. And the good news is they can be measured daily. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Those are some of the must-knows of daily shop management. A couple of other thought starters for you. Most owners and managers watch sales volume and year-over-year results. They compare this year or February of this year to February of last year. They look at those results on a daily basis, but they rely on their financial statements to tell them whether they made money or not. Financial statements are great. They're important. We got to have them. They're an important indicator, an important scorecard to tell us how we're doing. But from an operational standpoint and a daily shop management standpoint, they're way too late. They're usually provided 20 or more days after the event, which is far too late to influence behavior or get managers and employees to modify their behavior to change profitability outcomes. So very important that you know your profit every single day. And I'm not talking about gross profit today. I'm talking about operating profit. What happens after all of the expenses came out? So the first line here, sales, is something that pretty much every shop owner, every shop manager looks at the end of every day. How did we do today? In my example, sales of $2,500. And it's important to know how much business we did, but it's not an indicator of how profitable we are by any stretch of the imagination. And even some of the most seasoned managers and owners that I still speak with, even after working with them for many, many years, still seem to get overly focused on the sales number. And as I said from my first slide, would you rather do $100,000 of business and make $5,000? Or would you rather do $80,000 of business and make 15? I'll take the lower sales volume for the increased profit any day. The next important piece of information is what did we generate in gross profit? So after we paid our technicians, after the wages for the technicians came out, after the cost of any parts that we sold came out and the cost of any tires came out, what was left over? So this is the single most important number and the must-know number every single day that you operate, and not the number that comes out of your shop management system, your point of sale system. There isn't a point of sale system out there in the industry that accurately calculates labor cost, technician labor cost. There's all kinds of factors and all kinds of different compensation plans, from flat rate and hourly to commission to spiffs and overtime, and all sorts of factors in there that shop management systems simply don't have the capacity to measure. So you have to do a little bit of that on your own. But the important number to know is, what out of that $2,500 sales, how much did I have left over after technician wages came out, after cost of parts, cost of tires came out? The next number you got to know is, what is your daily fixed expenses? In my example, $700. Fixed expenses being things like rent, utilities, liability insurance, base salaries of service advisors and managers. Those are fixed costs. They don't change. It doesn't matter whether you did $2,500 today or $3,500 or $4,500. Those fixed expenses don't change. The next piece of information is to know what your variable expenses are as a percentage of sales. In my example, the variable expenses are 20% of sales. Pretty easy to find out just by doing a little bit of research, as we talked about last week, and knowing what that number is. And it's very consistent, typically month after month after month, as a percentage of sales. It might fluctuate a half a percentage point or so, but over a period of time, it stays pretty constant. So in this case, 20% of sales, my daily sales were $2,500, so my variable expenses today were $500. Then, if it's applicable, in some cases, you got to take out your overhead expenses. If you're a multiple store organization and you have a general manager or supervisors, or you've got the expense of an office aside from the business that creates some overhead for your business, then you need to know what those expenses are. The fixed and variable expenses relate specifically to a shop. The overhead typically goes beyond the shop. So if you've got other overhead in there, you need to know what it is on a daily basis. So in my particular example, I've got $1,500 of gross profit. I take out $700 of fixed expense, $500 of variable expense for today, $200 of overhead, and I'm left with $100 of net profit, money that's cash, money over and above my fixed, variable, and overhead costs. Now, just as a little indicator here, let's suppose I did $3,500 today, but I got no more gross profit dollars. So $3,500, let's say I sold an engine job or did a transmission or sold a bunch of tires, which are typically lower margin items that day. My sales were higher, but my gross profit stayed the same at $1,500. My fixed expenses didn't change. They're fixed. My variable expenses surely did. 20% of $3,500 is now $700 instead of $500, which resulted in a loss for this particular day, or negative cash flow of $100. So sales is not everything by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, sales is what drives gross profit dollars, but we need to know those numbers. And this is not difficult to track. So I'm going to flip over to a little spreadsheet for a minute that I have created that helps shop owners manage this profit on a daily basis. It's great to have financial statements, but if you do your homework and you do a little bit of research here, you can know where you stand profit-wise every single day. So these happen to be numbers from a real shop, by the way, and it goes back, started on November 1st, and basically my fixed expenses for this shop are $844 a day. The variable expenses are 18% of sales, and they have $300 of overhead per day in this particular organization. a multiple shop organization that has a couple of owners, it has a couple of supervisors, it's obviously got automobile expenses to get around the shop, it's got an office with bookkeepers and administrators and so on, all totaling up to $300 per day. So as I enter in my daily sales and my daily gross profit dollars, which again, not from your point of sale system, but from a proper calculation method, $2,853, you can see that I made $873 on this day. And as you go down, you can see this column G is what was generated on the day. Column H is a cumulative number, so what happens over a period of time. So you can see that this shop was growing nicely. The numbers in the pink background are negative numbers. So we went negative on the second day of this particular set. Then we started to grow again. We built it up nicely. We were making some profitability, and then something happened here around the middle of November. Maybe we had a staffing change. Any number of things could have happened, and we started to go negative. We started losing money, and before you know it, we were pretty deep in the hole cash-wise. And so we're going to have to modify our behaviors to make this change. And I think as we go down the way a little bit, we'll see that as we got later into January and moving forward, the store did start to take some significant corrective action. And as we get through into February, we had almost erased on that entire deficit by the middle of February. And I know from this store, they've started to make some pretty nice, significant improvements. But they don't need a financial statement to measure their profit every day. If they've done this part correctly and they just enter this simple bit of information, they've got some pretty good data to work with, and they can predict their profitability and manage it on a daily basis. So what must you know to manage your business on a daily basis? Well, you have to know your daily fixed expense. You can just take your financial statement, look at your annual fixed expenses, all of those things that are not likely to change, determine what they amounted to for the period of a year, divide it by your annual days open, in this case 306, and I can see that my daily fixed expenses in this particular example are $817 per day. And if you're going to increase your fixed expenses by adding a staff member in the coming year, by purchasing some equipment, or maybe creating a lease payment or something to expand, whatever it is, if your rent's going up, if your insurance is going up, you should plan for that and budget for that in that process to ensure that you're profitable. You also need to know your variable expense percentage. Just add up your variable expenses from your financial statement. In my example, $150,000. I did $800,000 worth of sales volume last year. So when I make that calculation, my variable expenses in this example were 18.75%. And same process with your daily overhead. If it's applicable, if you have overhead over and above the shop operation, take that into consideration, calculate it. $50,000 divided by the number of days you're open, figure out what your daily overhead is, $164 per day. Here's the most important number that you need to know. Here's the number that you can manage on a daily basis, the one that you can influence with behavior modification. You must know your daily gross profit demand. You must know the amount of gross profit dollars required to cover your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, your overhead, and still make a profit or add. The profit demand is the amount of profit you want to make in the period of time. If it's $100,000, if it's $200,000, that number needs to be factored into your daily gross profit demand. And I gave you the tools last week in the roadmap to profit to calculate your daily gross profit demand. You just had to plug in a few very, very simple numbers, and bingo, your daily gross profit demand appeared in the little worksheet that I provided to you in last week's webinar. Hopefully you took advantage of that. You asked for that worksheet and you used it to determine your daily gross profit demand. The single most important, the must know of every single repair shop, what is the daily gross profit demand? A couple of other things you must know. You must know the impact of low margins. As I demonstrated earlier on in today's webinar, when you create a higher sales volume, but you created at lower margins because you did dealer parts, you did a transmission job today that was at a lower margin, an engine job, you sold a lot of tires, those types of higher sales items, but at lower margins, increases your daily gross profit demand because the variable expenses go up. Your fixed expenses don't change, your overhead per day doesn't change, but your variable expenses, those things that you incur that are variable to your business, whether they be royalty and advertising, whether they be employee benefits, whether they be credit card commissions, whatever they are, they go up as your sales go up, and so it increases the amount of gross profit you need to generate. So understand the impact of low margins, on your daily gross profit demand. You must know, obviously, how to influence daily gross profit. It's great to know what your daily gross profit demand is, but if you don't know how to influence it, then you're nowhere anyway. It's great to have information, but if you don't know what to do about it, it's of very, very little help to you. And of course, we have a webinar on every possible subject on how to influence your daily gross profit. But just as a short synopsis of the things that you can do to influence your daily gross profit are, of course, control your labor cost. And when I talk about labor cost, I'm talking about your technician labor cost, making sure you're having proper utilization, getting the maximum out of your technicians, that you don't have an excess number, that you're not incurring a lot of overtime or additional unnecessary expenses. We talked about a lot of this on the first 4 webinars of 2019. Building value in the sales process and avoiding discounting, getting the proper margins on your parts, taking the emotional side out of it, avoiding reducing your price due to consumer demands or those sorts of things. Being able to build value in the process, be a professional, avoid discounting, maintain the margins that you need to get the gross profit dollars that are going to help you be profitable. Make informed decisions. Service advisors, managers in the shops making decisions all day long, where to buy parts, how much to charge for the parts, what to charge for, what not to charge for, how much labor is appropriate, and so on. Should we take in this job? Is it going to be profitable for the store? On and on and on and on. Make informed decisions. A lot of us are just making decisions based on our emotions, how we feel at the time, what happened in the last transaction. We need to be able to make informed decisions. How is this decision that I'm going to make today going to impact our gross profit and the profitability of the shop? That expensive dealer part, we got to get paid this much money for it to be able to be profitable. Those are our informed decisions. And obviously identifying more opportunities. When we've got those vehicles in the shop, most of us have pretty good traffic these days. We got a lot of opportunity coming into the shop, making sure that we're inspecting the car properly, making sure that we're identifying tire opportunities, making sure that we're identifying maintenance opportunities, identifying more opportunities than just what the customer came in for. A lot of us out there, a lot of our stores have order takers. We simply take what the customer asks for, we deliver it to them in a professional manner, but there are a lot more opportunities out there, and we need to do a better job of identifying them, and then we need to do a better job of converting those opportunities. Identifying them is great, but if we can't convert them into actual sales and actual gross profit dollars, it isn't much help. So we're going to talk about those subjects a lot in the next series of webinars, which you'll hear about at the end of today's webinar. Daily tracking, of course, requires us to be able to measure these items easily. I mentioned more than once that your point of sale system does not give you a complete picture of your daily gross profit dollars, or the custom KPI reporting function of our dashboard, our coaching tool, is a very great way that allows you to create any report that you want for any date range you want for a single day, and is the fastest way I know of to be able to gather the information that you need to be effective at daily management. This particular report that I have showing on my screen shows total sales for the day, total gross profit for the day, what was left over after cost of parts, cost of technician wages, cost of tires. What did we decline today? How much sales? How much of our total opportunity did we capture? In this example, 74.3% today. We had 9 repair orders, a $364 average repair order. We estimated on average $490 per repair order, and our gross profit percentage today was 53.1. Those are some of the favorite items that can be influenced on a daily basis by anyone at the shop level, a manager, a service advisor, and some of the really important ones and the must-knows of daily shop management. But whatever it is, this report can be custom created, can be selected for any date range. For those of you that are in multiple shop organizations, multiple shops can be displayed in this report. As well, so you can get a snapshot of how everyone in your organization is performing, and in a very quick and easy report to access, you can have all of the information that I've been talking about, those must-knows of daily shop management. So whatever it is, whether you're using the tools that we have available or whether you need to create your own, I encourage you to be able to get that information as quickly and easily as possible and put it into a format that is extremely easy to read, that everyone can review on a daily basis. Pretty short, pretty concise webinar today, but extremely important in my opinion. We've got to be able to manage our profitability on a daily basis. We just can't wait for the profit and loss statement to come out to know how we did. We can know on a daily basis, and we need to know on a daily basis in time for us to be able to influence and control it. Hopefully you got some good information today, and I look forward to hearing from you when we open up the lines. Our next webinar, we're going to shift into that identifying and capturing those opportunities. We're going to talk about getting to yes. Most repair shops are declining more sales than they're actually converting. And I recently looked at a series of shops that I work with, and the number on an annual basis was anywhere from $2 million to $4 million of opportunity that was in the bays that got away. Work that we didn't get. That's a ton of money that's already in our base. We just have to find more solutions on getting to yes. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next series of webinars. We're going to get started next Monday, March 11th, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and then there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 webinars that follow along these themes that talk about overcoming objections, building better communication tools to capture more of our opportunities. Hopefully you can join us for those. Angela and I want to thank you for your participation on today's webinar. Hopefully you did get a couple of good ideas. Let's go ahead and open the lines, Angela, and see if we've got any questions or comments on today's webinar.
No hands raised. Linda Fields did have a comment about the worksheet, asking if a copy of the cash flow sheet would be available following the presentation.
We can certainly make that available.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda, for your question and your comment. I'm glad you see value in it. Let's see if we can get Dave Delaney. I haven't seen Dave on a webinar, and I don't remember when. Dave, are you there? Maybe no microphone on the webinar. How about Joseph Turkitz? Name doesn't jump to my mind immediately. Joseph, do you have a microphone today? Can you give us a comment on the webinar? Sounds pretty quiet there as well. Boy, I got lots of names. How about Scott? Scott, do you have a microphone on your computer today? You're self-muted, Scott. You would have to unmute yourself to give us a comment. I'm going to go to Herb White. Oops, Herb left, I think. Michael, let's try Michael. Michael, do you have a microphone on your computer today? Are you able to comment on today's webinar? I am batting 1,000 today, aren't I, Angela?
I thought it was a great presentation, very valuable.
Well, I appreciate everybody that was here. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get audio from you, but if you do have questions or comments or need more information, don't hesitate to contact us at the number on screen or by email. We always enjoy hearing from you, and we're always happy to help wherever we can. Thanks for joining us today. Hope to see you next week for Getting to Yes. Till then, have a great day and a great week. Bye for now.